Now, time for a story this morning comes from what we call the Hidden Gem in Liverpool. This beautiful Gothic building of Ullet Road Unitarian Church. And we have to thank the Reverend Phil Waldron, its minister, for allowing us to film here in his beautiful church this morning. And as you can see, it is an absolutely beautiful place. Now, over this summer, as you can see, we are here in Liverpool, my hometown of Liverpool. Lockdown has been eased and we were able to travel, and although masks were worn and gloves, the usual travelling to Chester and Wales didn't happen. But we did enjoy our local park. Now, Sefton Park, just over the road from this beautiful church, covers 235 acres, including grass and woodland. It has a large lake, at the moment covered in Canada geese, and the odd family of swans, with some very cross father swans trying to look after their cygnets. Now, in the park, there is also a large palm house full of beautiful plants. It is surrounded by many statues, from James Cook, an explorer of Australia, Charles Darwin, a botanist, Linnaeus, who was responsible for the classification of animals and other species, in fact, the modern system of naming organisms, and Mercator, the father of modern cartography. Now, because of Mercator's projection, the navigators of the succeeding centuries sailed on their voyages of discovery. But probably the most well-known statue, and loved by all in Liverpool, is this one of Peter Pan. And as you can see, it is quite something. There he is, standing at the top, and there's quite a lot of the characters that appear in his books. Now, on the 15th of June, this year, 2020, this statue was 92 years old. The statue, as you can see, is in a beautiful setting, surrounded by rhododendrons. Now, this had to be moved many years ago, in 1970, because of vandalism. So it isn't now in its original spot. The damage had to be repaired, and that's what we see today by the palm house. But as you look at the statue, you can see the story of Peter Pan, the boy that never grew up, created by J.M. Barrie. Now, this story is loved the world over. It was written in 1902, and it became a huge success. The animated film by Walt Disney in 1953 is still one of Disney's most popular films. A simple story based on the mischievous god of the woodlands, Pan. But it is also said to be based on Barrie's own brother, David, who died sadly at the age of 14 in a skating accident. The story that J.M. Barrie wrote about Peter Pan was said to have given his mother great comfort. Now, the story was a play when it was first published in 1904. And then, in 1911, it was published as a novel. Both versions tell the story of Peter Pan, a mischievous yet innocent little boy. A little boy who can fly and who has many adventures on the island of Neverland. This island is inhabited by mermaids, fairies, Native Americans, and of course, pirates. And Peter Pan has many adventures involving Wendy Darling and her two brothers. There's also his fairy friend, Tinkerbell. The Lost Boys, and of course, the best-known character of all, the pirate Captain Hook. We all know and love the Disney animated full-length film of 1953. And the novel that was first published in 1911 has a frontispiece and 11 half-tone plates by artist F.D. Bedford. And these beautiful illustrations are still under copyright. The novel Peter Pan was first abridged by May Byron in 1915. And of course, with J.M. Barrie's permission, this was published under the well-known title of Peter Pan and Wendy. A title a lot of us refer to when talking of the book. This version of the story was later illustrated by Mabel Lucy Atwell in 1921. And her illustrations of the story are probably the most memorable. In 1929, J.M. Barrie gave the copyright of Peter Pan and all the works he did to the Great Ormond Street Hospital. And this is a famous children's hospital in London. J.M. Barrie was a dedicated writer and an extremely caring man. Barrie created the story of Peter Pan, which he would tell to the sons of his friend, Sylvia Llewellyn Davis. They were great friends, and when she died from cancer just a few years after her husband, he became the guardian of her sons, and he unofficially adopted them. So much was the love of his children. He cared for Sylvia's children for the rest of his life. And his love and his generosity is clearly shown in his books. And of course, his great generosity to the Great Ormond Street Hospital. And in this beautiful church in Liverpool, there is nowhere better to tell this story. And I am now going to read a couple of pages of Peter Pan. In a quiet street in London lived the Darling family. There were Father and Mother Darling, Wendy, Michael and John, as well as the children's nursemaid, Nana, a St. Bernard dog. At bedtime in the nursery, Wendy always told wonderful stories about Peter Pan and Neverland, a magical place with mermaids and fairies and wicked pirates too. John and Michael liked best of all to play pirates. They had some fine slashing duels between Peter Pan and his arch enemy, the pirate Captain Hook. Father Darling did not like this kind of play. He blamed it on Wendy's childish stories of Peter Pan. "It is time for Wendy to grow up," decided Father Darling. "This is your last night in the nursery, Wendy girl." All the children were much upset at that. Without Wendy, there would be no more stories of Peter Pan. That very evening, who should come to the nursery but Peter Pan and a fairy named Tinkerbell. And at the end of this story, I would like to quote from the Reverend Arthur Long. He was a friend of ours, but he was also principal of the Unitarian College in Manchester. And he used to finish the college closing proceedings with a quote from Peter Pan. "Remember, God is watching to see that you are adventurous."